Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome those online as well as those in the commission conference room this afternoon. It is Monday, September 11th. It is 12:40. We're starting just a bit late. And this is our public work session. I'm Commissioner Gage Ford. I'll be conducting. With me is Commissioner Sharon Bolos to my right, Commissioner Jim Harvey to my left. Let's start with a discussion or action for approval of the minutes for the work session that we held on August 31st, 2023. Discussion and or action.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Let's go to our next agenda item, which is the 12:30 discussion regarding the Basin Development Agreement. Project Old Snowbasin Road and Highway 39 Huntsville. Steve Burton, Cortland Erickson, Charlie Ewart's not here, Rick Grover's here. Gary Myers, Tucker's here, Gary's not here. And Ashley's here. And of course, we have Cortland and Chris Crockett with us. Sean was with us as well. Okay, Steve, are you taking the lead on this?
Yeah, commissioners. Probably a month or two ago, I don't know if you're, just to remind you or familiarize you with the project. There is a development called the Basin. It's off of Highway 39 and Old Snowbasin Road. It was rezoned from CBR1 to FR3 probably 2 years ago. And at the time when it was rezoned, it limited the development to 10 single-family lots and no short-term rentals. Normally under FR3, they could have gotten more dwelling units and they could get short-term rental, doesn't allow use. But as part of the rezone, that process, there were some public, quite a bit of public that showed up against the rezone, and it was brought down to 10 dwelling units and no short-term rentals. You may remember there was a discussion at some point after the rezone about a possible number of dwelling units that could be transferred, because the CBR1 zone technically allows somewhere around 20 units to the acre if there's sewer lines close by. So the idea back then was, well, maybe the owners of the basin can transfer development rights to a developer in the area, and that developer would maybe agree to installing some intersection improvements, if you remember that conversation. Having a conversation with Chase Freeburn, who represents the basin. He came into our office and said, hey, yeah, he had a couple questions for us. I think he met with Commissioner Frower and Commissioner Bolos kind of separately, asking about possibly acknowledging those development rights, but also possibility of asking for short-term rental. And just after those conversations, I just figured it might be better to have all of you in the room and for Chase to maybe be able to ask you those questions. But that's the purpose for this meeting.
Got it. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, so appreciate Steve taking the time and that background, and really it's just like you said, just two questions. Number one, when we did do that agreement, those TDRs that were in question, I believe we started with 64, 10 went to the project itself. So there's 10 lots recorded, improved on the project itself. It's under construction. And then, the questions now is what happens with the remaining 50 TDRs? If anything, at the time, the county didn't have the TDR ordinance. I know that was earlier this year. The planning commission didn't seem to know what to do with that until there was an ordinance in place. And so I guess the question number one to you is, are there TDRs there? And can they be transferred? And then question two, is the county open to any type of amendment on the development agreement in terms of short-term rental?
Okay. Well, and you're right. We did have a meeting. I don't remember the discussion coming up on the TDRs, but it did come up on the overnight rentals. And I think I told him it was pretty much a done deal. That wasn't going to, it was in the development agreement, that no overnight rentals, short-term rentals could be allowed. So take the chance that, you can always go back to planning or make some type of proposal. But that was my comment. I don't know. I know you met separately too.
We didn't, and all I did was direct, Chase to go back to planning because of the agreement that went through before my time. I don't wanna make a decision based on decisions that were made prior to me coming in office. And I can't remember. Talk about one or the other being allowed now under the current general plans.
Yeah, and I know part of the discussion too was about the improvements to the intersection. The county wanting to see to get that funded and improved. For safety, and I think everybody in this room would like that to happen, but. If there are TDRs there. You know, if there's something we could do to help expedite that or help, if there are TDRs, can we sell those to help fund the improvements there?
Okay, so let's talk about the TDRs. Rick, so what's planning's understanding of as far as the TDRs? Do they exist or
So
do they not exist?
They could exist, and the only area they could be transferred into is the village areas at the present time. The village areas are the receiving areas for any type of transport.
Now, is this a village area?
This was identified as a village area on the plan. We would be transferring it from this area, you'd have to go to another village area. This was intended, it did identify this as a commercial village, but as we looked at it, it really functions more as some type of residential component village versus commercial. Just because of the nature of Old Snowbasin Road. It doesn't go through, and so it is identified as a village area, but does it function as a village area? Probably, if it does, it would be, like I said, more of a residential as opposed to commercial in nature. So,
Well, the original zone proposal for a long way back was for a hotel.
correct,
I mean, that was why it was zoned that way.
correct.
We all know Cat and Zero that put that through a number of years ago. And so and that's the reason it had, was it the 64 TDR, 60 plus?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look on
Anyway.
that.
And then it was decided when Basin came in, that they would go with was it 5 or 11 homes?
10.
10, that's right. They wanted,
What happened was the development agreement specified 10, but it didn't say what happened to any of the remainders. So you could acknowledge them if you wanted to in a development agreement. Hey, you've got these, you can transfer them, or you could say you didn't acknowledge them, and so they're gone.
Yeah, it's strictly up to you on that.
Harv, where are you on this?
Well, I'm gonna go off of my memory. So we came in and, I'm in full disclosure because we're here in a public meeting, but. We came in and I'm gonna shift gears for just a second to tell the story. We came in and negotiated on this corner, and then it was about the same time that, John Lewis came in and developed what's that subdivision up
Legacy.
above it, Legacy? And then he said, hey, listen, if I do this and this and this, I'm gonna help build the turn lanes in this subdivision. And we all said, okay, agreed. And then it wasn't you, Chase, it was, I can see his face, Todd came in and they were all hung up on doing this, and we said no, short-term rentals. We decided on 10, they went forward with it. Todd was pissed at me. I remember that, because I remember that, but I'm just going off of memory, but we've since created that ordinance, and if you don't just declare those TDRs at the time you record your subdivision, you don't, they go into, they don't exist anymore. Now, this is right all around that same time. Could be, so I'm absolutely no on the short-term rentals. Cause that's what we agreed on the no, we said no, and so I'm not gonna back
I think
on that.
I think we're consistent there.
And as far as the TDRs, I'd have to have a pretty compelling reason why I'd afford TDRs now and not just take them off the floor entirely. That's where I am on it.
And, we've spent countless hours discussing.
This was a
discussing
long,
this. And as I recall, and I don't know if we've ever put anything in ordinance, but you remember Commissioner Jenkins and I kind of saw opposite sides to the TDRs, some, and I just said, look, if you have X number of TDRs, you could go in and put 200 homes on it, you decide not to put 200 homes.
Right.
You want to put 60 homes, then as long as that's declared up front, you should have the right that should be part of your development agreement, and you retain those TDRs. I thought that was done in this particular case, but it was never done, so I guess what I'm saying, I still stand by the principle that, look, you've got X number of TDRs before you start the development. Once you start the development, those TDRs better be clarified or they come off the books.
I'm remembering it about the same way. I'm just saying that this development with CW land was right in that whole
Yeah,
time.
no,
And so
we did have the discussion about using those for the road. And
with
so,
Lewis,
with Lewis,
and you know what? Todd was in those meetings on some of that. Todd sat in that chair right there. And he was in part of those meetings and say, we'll share in part of the cost of that turning lane.
There was discussion, but it was never formalized in any type of written agreement.
So Todd, in his development of the basin, he was required to put up, I think, somewhere around $80,000 as his portion of that intersection.
right,
So we have, in escrow, we have 87, I think total amount right now is 114,000, but we will hold $87,000 for the improvement of the intersection.
and what the total cost to do that intersection?
Actually,
About 400,000.
I was gonna say, cause we got UDOT involved, we got everybody involved, try to put that on them.
Yeah, we've got a design and a cost estimate. Their cost estimate came in at 300, but I think realistically, we're up around 400.
That's where we needed John's help to pick up the other.
Pick up the gap.
Yeah,
We started looking at what lots were left, what impact fees, but this is not a project that's on our impact fee project list right now. So it'd be more development oriented as opposed to using county impact.
Right.
fees.
Well, because of Osprey, doesn't John have to put some into this?
Osprey or Legacy?
Or
Legacy.
Legacy, not Osprey.
I can speak to that a little bit. We had a work session before Legacy recorded. And, we had a work session with the commission and our understanding was that developer should have to pay a portion to upgrade. And I believe Legacy recorded before the Basin did. And
Right.
I remember UDOT was here, and I think the end of the meeting, the direction that we received was, because UDOT isn't willing to actually do these improvements with John's money, that we weren't gonna make John put up any kind of funding.
Well, who decided that? Because we, not in that meeting, cause I was under the impression leaving that meeting that John was gonna put up. It seemed like $100,000+ into that intersection. I remember UDOT said, no, hang it in your ear, which I thought was a piece of crap on UDOT's part. And then Todd was gonna put up some, and then I don't remember where, but it was all done. The deal, all the money was accounted for those turn lanes.
It was between the Basin and John buying the development rights. But I don't believe we ever put a number for Legacy. And I believe, was it Commissioner Jenkins that directed that?
yeah, and because we didn't do anything with the transfer of development rights, it ended up just stalling.
Okay,
Well, that must have been something he did before. I didn't know that.
So I have a question for you two, and maybe planning, what was the reason why those TDRs weren't addressed? Why
We
did?
did.
they- What was the exchange for that then?
No, it had to do with the,
We didn't fully have the TDR ordinance complete.
Oh, okay.
And we still don't fully have a complete TDR ordinance, but we do have a receiving area for those
Right,
in the village area. So
Right.
that meets the intent of that.
because it sounds like if the TDR ordinance was in place and there was no exchange for short-term rentals or anything else, that they would have had these development rights available. So that's my question to you two who were here is, it sounds like those TDRs weren't held because the ordinance wasn't in place, the concept wasn't finalized or whatever. But otherwise, it sounds like the developer just said, I'm gonna do you this favor by only building 10 lots. I
What
don't
we,
understand where the concept of the TDRs, was that even discussed?
that's a great question, and it was.
Yeah, good
We,
point.
I thought that John was gonna pay something, and Rick, and I'm gonna need the two of you to help me with this. John's portion, I thought was 180, 200 and something $1,000. And then we said, okay, you're gonna be able to get these TDRs back. That was the purchase on these, being able to get those TDRs. And so, cause I remember sitting right here and we said, okay, we just established a price on what those TDRs are now worth. Wasn't that right?
You're right, but that conversation happened after John recorded legacy already. He had already recorded legacy and came to the table with the idea that he was gonna be able to purchase some CW.
But to answer your question, Commissioner, yeah, that was discussed that John would take X number of TDRs at whatever value to, I don't know, fully fund, but partially fund, if not fully fund, along with what the basin put in for that intersection.
Right.
Now, obviously, we never did, memorialize that, never put in the development agreement. So was that our fault or John's fault or?
The way I look at it is, we didn't acknowledge them because the basin wasn't asking about it. They said, we want to rezone because we want to start building these
Right.
single family, so give us our zone, and we did, but we
Right.
forgot to have that conversation about, well, where do those remainders go?
Well, it sounds like you did say John had the understanding that he would be able to purchase those from CW. Did you just say
There
that?
was I believe there was some kind of memorandum of understanding.
Well, that's where I dropped the ball, because it sounds like the conversation was had that those TDRs actually existed. There's just nothing in writing that,
They did exist, no question about it.
Yeah.
They would.
and that's what they're asking for now, right? Is the use of those.
And they still do, they technically could exist if you acknowledge them, because we haven't completed an ordinance
Right.
that says they're eliminated once they subdivide. So,
Jim, you had a question or comment? Go ahead.
I was just sharing with Steve with Cottonwood. The estimated amount was 330,000. Lewis's portion would be 150,000, county 100,000, and Basin 80,000. Lewis wants to 54 TDRs by paying to the county, and Basin's amount is $180,000 for $3,333 for TDR.
Okay.
See, it sounds like that,
Okay.
it just sounds like the conversation was there, but not the documentation.
So, and in order for the documentation to be there, it would have required a development agreement amendment, and I think that's why Chase is here
Right.
to ask if it's even worth it to bring that
Right,
application back to the table.
that's what I understand.
yeah, it's strictly up to you guys how you want to proceed with that. Sounds like the STRs, you've given us direction, no on those.
Yeah,
but-
I don't see that's worth discussing at this point in time. But I
Would
think,
they be allowed there under the general plan?
Would short-term rentals,
Uh-huh.
village area,
Possibly, but you need to take into context the neighborhood
Mhm.
around that. If you do look at this, there were concerns about parking in that area and how we manage that, because there's only a 2-car garage on there, and how do we enforce that were some of the issues that came up if we did look at STRs in this area, and the possible impact it would have on the residents to the south and east of this development. So those were some of the things that were some concerns with STRs in this area.
okay, so,
I don't really have a difference of opinion on that. I mean, it doesn't sound like that's what we want there, but I really would like to address something that it seems like just was never memorialized.
Right.
But the conversation was had, and I just don't understand why you would ask a developer to give up those rights in exchange for nothing.
And it was definitely left on the table, but it, like you said, it hasn't been memorialized. And it would have to be done, like Steve mentioned, through a development agreement.
Okay.
Amending that.
I think part of that too, because you have to send these to a village, right, like we said earlier. And didn't John Lewis, he didn't own any property in that village yet, so
Mm.
you couldn't send it to him? Is that something that got brought up to you?
That was part of it, I think, yeah, I guess that's a good point, huh? The ordinance talks about transferring it to a parcel. Now, the commission, as you know, you can adopt a new law legislatively by a development agreement. So, yeah, today you could acknowledge the units through a development agreement if you want.
Okay. All right, well, here's what I'd like to do. You guys either come up with another plan. I think we need to look at the cost, get a good estimate on the cost of that road. We know what we have in escrow right now. I'd like to sit down with John, and since he was part of that conversation, and look at a realistic agreement on those TDRs. I'm not in favor, I'm not carte blanche gonna say, hey, the 54 units, I think we need to look at the dollars, and I'd probably be acceptable to some of those be in place to compensate for that road, probably not all of them. And so I think we just need to look at the numbers, and, cause even though he recorded, and I understand he recorded prior to this coming up with UDOT, we should probably have UDOT at the table too, cause I really think UDOT has some type of responsibility on this as well. So I would just say we need to get a little piece of the game from a number of other players, not just from one. Go ahead.
If I can add to that, that those, if a portion of those 54, if a portion of those 54 were to remain, that they would only be available in a receiving area, which would not be that intersection. Cause there's another play gonna happen on that east side of that intersection someday, somehow.
Yeah.
So I don't wanna have them move across the street to the east. So but I think that's where I am on that.
I think we can designate where those go. Yeah, absolutely.
Would you like that to come back in a work session format or just with you, Commissioner Thrower, and then?
I'd say work session. I think probably worthy of a work session.
We will get that set up and
Yeah, let's look at the numbers. Let's get Region 1 guys here at the same time and get their perspective.
Okay.
So I think there's a way to solve it. If we all kind of agree to see what's right. But as far as the STRs, I don't see any debate on that.
Yeah.
Barb,
Nope, you're good. I'm singing out of the same hymn book.
okay. Jim,
If I may speak for a moment, I see that, I think Steve has a lot there up on the board that we're talking about, is 3.2 acre lot. At the time when that was being built, they had requested 13, they had never asked for TDR. In fact, the TDR question, if you remember, came up by Don Lewis, not by Todd Myers. He didn't even know about it. The development agreement had already been filed. As you pointed out, that was supposed to be a hotel. So the 64 units would be going up, not out. If you were to say they have 54 TDRs that can go, I don't see any open space that's going to be protected. Their 4,000 square foot houses are taking every inch of that place on it. And I believe when I look at the general plan and look at TDR, it's supposed to be agriculture area to protect open space, transfer to a village area, to allow farmers and ranchers to have the opportunity to sell some of their rights without having to build on the property. In this case, you're taking a 3.2 acre land that if you're giving them 54 TDRs to transfer to whomever, John Lewis, there's no open space that's going to be available. Plus, you're transferring from developer to developer and village to village. It does not meet my interpretation, anything that's written in the general plan. So one is they never even thought about they being Todd Myers at least, until John brought it up. The only redeeming value about this, and I agree with this, is it's a way to get the intersection paid. And I'm not sure that I, as a citizen, would want the county to say, okay, we're gonna manipulate the TDRs so we can get our intersection plan, because we were unable, we forgot that every development went up there was going to add pressure to that road. So now we're, 20 years down the line, and we're, I know our community is realizing, hey, this intersection won't benefit. So if that was the funds to pay for the intersection, good, but it's not, to me, it's a real violation of the general plans TDRs. As Jan Fulmer said, we're gonna have a TDR coin rather than a Bitcoin.
I don't disagree with that. Okay, well, I think we just need to have that discussion and, yeah, and I don't disagree with some of the comments that Jim's made. It's entire, the TDR was put in place to preserve open space and protect farmland. In this case, the developers, I'm gonna call it a self-imposed hardship, decided instead of to go vertical, they went horizontal and could have easily, if they would have recognized those TDRs at the time they came in for that proposal, you think they would have tried to protect it. So anyway, there's some questions I have.
I'm about the same. I want to make sure that people in this room here, I'm about the same there. The only, this is everything you said is right, except for this is an anomaly based on how that intersection was zoned long before 20 years ago. How this intersection was zoned back when Snowbasin used to charge $13 for a lift ticket, so people could do it.
$3, so hey.
Oh, wow. I don't remember Dan Wright might remember $3 on the ticket, but he might be the only guy online that can remember that.
Close to it. All right, anything else?
No.
Harv, anything else?
No, no.
Appreciate it. Okay, appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Wow, we are back on schedule.
Schedule.
103. We got our guys from the state coming up.
Here we go.
It'll be a good meeting, I hope. All right. So, I'm assuming UDOT probably has changed their viewpoint of that road.
Yeah, they took a good stance.
We can count on that. Oh, were they?
Different projects.
That is Beaver County. What was Beaver County? I don't know, it doesn't change in my mind, but that is.
Yeah. Come on, bring it in.
Wow.
This is the. Not actually. Somewhere along the line, probably struck off in a tax sale. But it's clearly says family, right? That these people access. Boy. That's your top.
Yeah, that's it.
My dad said.
So we just have to right away.
Yeah, just a right of way.
It's not on.
Let's see, we may have some ownership there, but even if we did, we never allowed it without it. We don't make any.
Oh, man. In order for us to take it over, they have to get it over.
Let's see, we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 against 3. Not too fair. Probably ought to go get a few more folks.
How you doing? Good.
Good.
Commissioner Ford?
Yes.
You asked for an audience?
Wow, I say you outdid yourself, JB.
So nice to meet you.
So in front of you, got President Kelsey, State of Utah. And I've been really interested in this topic and the community. And
We got a few interested people. All right, well, let's start this meeting. So it's now time for our 1 o'clock opioid update. We have with us John Bond. In person, Greg Kelsey, State of Utah, Scott Park. Scott, I don't see Scott around. There he is. Linnell, she here, Linnell Jensen, Chris Crockett, Sean Wilkinson, Sheriff Arbon, I believe, is meeting us on Zoom. Brooke Stewart, Kevin Eastman, Bryce Sherwood, Brian Cowan, Stephanie Russell. Who did I miss?
would you introduce?
Susanna Burt.
State of Utah?
No, actually, Weaver Human Services.
Weaver Human Services. Okay. Kevin Eastman, okay. Brian Cowan. Okay,
Jessica Clark's here.
yeah. Jim Metallic,
And Daniel Lancaster.
Daniel, Jessica's here. Okay,
Jed Burton, our clinical director.
there we go. All right. With that, introductions, I
I sure would.
think we got him on there. We appreciate, Brent, I know we had this conversation on the phone, seems like a month or so ago. Appreciate you coming up and spending some time with us. As you well know, the counties have a fairly substantial settlement from the opioid, and we're getting to the point where we're trying to make some decisions on where that money's spent, but have been waiting patiently for the state. And we know that the state doesn't always run, very fast, but they do things very thorough. We appreciate that. Remember that, Barb.
Okay, thank you.
Just a reminder.
Let me make a note of that
Yeah,
right
make
now.
anyway, so, when we discussed in terms of the state participation, in terms of the match, we felt, when I say we, the commission felt it was important before we made any calls in terms of, using our settlement money, we find out where the state's headed, get some ideas from you, and then obviously, look, if we can leverage our funds, then that's better for everybody. So if you could just kind of give us an update where the state is, and
Yeah.
I know we had one proposal that Kevin was involved with.
And I saw that about a year ago.
Yeah.
And a number of the counties are going through the same process that you
Okay.
are, so. I know that the Utah Association of Counties is gathering some information, about what counties are doing. At the state level, we have really, moved forward on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 projects. And they're all out the door but one.
Okay,
And so, and the way that we're doing this is we're using the regular appropriations process. So, ideas will be vetted by the Social Services Appropriations Subcommittee at the legislature. They then rank and prioritize those through the budget process. And at the end of the session, we know which projects were funded and which ones were not. In addition, there's an opioid settlement agreement committee that's helping my office review and evaluate ideas and vet proposals, and then also evaluate what the state's doing with the projects that have been funded. Of the projects that have been funded, they've all been funded for a 3-year period. So with the settlement agreement, we have 18 years of funding. The amount until last year, when they did the appropriations, there was $288 million that they anticipated coming in. And they've spread that money over the 18 years. There was also a pretty serious discussion about, okay, how much of this is real money and how much of it is unlikely to materialize because of bankruptcy or other, just failure to make payments. So the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, the legislative fiscal analysts had long discussions about how much of this money can we really guarantee is going to be there. And what they determined is that there was just a little over $6 million at the state in our portion of the funding that they felt comfortable appropriating as ongoing funding for the projects that we were proposing. There was an additional amount of money, almost $3 million, that they reserved for one-time funding, just out of concern that potentially that money wouldn't materialize in the years to come. So they appropriated about $6.3 million in total. And we had presented 5 projects. So we were really of the belief that prevention should be a priority. And so there was about $2.5 million that went out to primary prevention activities. That money has all been distributed to the local substance abuse authorities at the county level. So I think, Susanna, you've probably been involved in Weber County's proposal there. And have you received that money?
Yes, we have.
Okay, what are you doing with it?
We are doing 2 new coalition coordinators and then a halftime coalition coordinator, or someone up in there, and then anything that's left over will go towards funding those new coalitions. So it's Bonneville Cone. It doesn't have any coalition right now. Supporting Project Success and Ogden High Cone. And then supporting Morgan with a part-time employee up there. And then anything that's left over will go towards, again,
Great.
their strategic plan.
Great, and that's money that went directly to Weaver Given Services.
Yeah.
From the state.
But to allocate it on to the county.
That's
Based on
ongoing?
a proposal.
Well, that's
Well, all
3
projects will be 3 years.
Okay.
And we'll
All
evaluate
right.
outcomes. And
Okay,
then we'll have to go back and represent to the legislature. So it's a little different than the money we normally receive from the legislature. Where they usually either give us ongoing or one time. In this bucket, they're giving 3 years worth of funding.
okay, makes sense.
We also, we've been running a program in Salt Lake County called the Bridge Program with, the University of Utah Health System. And basically, we use peer support specialists who, go into the hospital when the individual has, survived an overdose or has presented in the emergency room because of an opioid use disorder. There's a team that tries to engage that individual in seeking care in the community. They're able to begin medication-assisted treatment within the emergency room or within urgent care, and then connect that person to care in the community. It's been successful in Salt Lake County, where we've got an open application for 4 additional sites for that project within the hospital systems. And that's out there right now. We haven't made those awards yet.
And Brent, I might just comment on that if I can. Weaver Human Services plans to apply for that funding because that project was part of our original request to the commission.
A year ago.
Okay.
Okay,
So that would be money that would come from the state to potentially Weaver County outside of what you're doing with your
And
money.
is there a match on that?
There is not.
Okay.
so that's not a match.
There's not a match. That's just money that we're making available.
But some of the state money requires a match. It's not
When-
necessarily 50-50, but it's a match.
Right. The next project.
So have you, hold on, so have you applied for that?
Yeah, okay.
So I
It's-
just talked to
they're
Eric and he
working on
said
that
that
one.
the RFP actually hasn't even been sent out yet, so.
All right, okay,
Yeah, we've got approval. It should be coming out within the next 2 weeks.
okay, got it.
Sorry, and then with the jail diversion receiving center, you did apply for that, right? Or you're applying for that?
Was that part of the original?
So,
So
no,
MAT,
okay.
no, we did not. MAT we did.
yeah. MAT and jail.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
talking about. So we also prioritize, we have about $1 million for projects with counties that are using some of their opioid settlement dollars to improve services within the jail, or if you have a receiving center, to provide medication-assisted treatment within a receiving center.
Is this the one that we
That's the
talked
letter.
about?
letter of
And so
intent.
this is the one that we talked about on the phone,
Right,
where we really wanted the local authorities to work collaboratively with the county sheriff on a project to reduce the impact on the criminal justice system. Or improve services.
too, if he's got any questions.
So we did get your letter of intent,
okay,
and that I'm not sure that we've closed those applications yet. I think they
We just
closed this
submitted
week.
ours and it was accepted on Friday, I believe.
Yeah, so that's the one I was thinking about. That's the one that closes this week.
And that one does require a 20% match, so we've applied for up to $200,000, depending on the award. It could require up to $40,000 from the county.
And we only received, what we did, we asked for those letters of intent. Because we frankly didn't know how many counties would be willing to put some of their money or make this match. And we initially had said we would make 10 awards of up to $100,000, which isn't a lot of money, really, to move out on a project like this. We only had 5 counties express interest, and so we changed the rules.
So now we're up to
apply for
200,000.
200,000. So,
and then that requires a 20% match?
yeah. Yeah.
And so you're closed, so you're not taking any more applications?
Well, we're gonna fund this round and we'll, and
All right.
and hopefully all the proposals that we receive are, you know, good, strong proposals and we can fund them and move forward. If not, we'll reopen it and we'll try again.
Okay,
Our intent is really to make sure that these dollars are used to improve services in the jail, and strengthen the collaboration between treatment providers and law enforcement and other community stakeholders.
well, I think we've got buy-in from everybody on the
Yeah.
law enforcement side, human services side. The
Yeah,
health department, I think, is 100% on board, so.
okay. Then these projects, we had also proposed, funding for housing. That proposal was not funded by the legislature. There's some talk about possibly a housing proposal this next year. There have been some additional settlements reached, and there's additional money that is likely to be appropriated. We still don't know how much. But I know that the Department of Workforce Services and other partners are very concerned about housing. Frankly, we pulled our proposal last year during the session because Workforce Services was moving forward on so many different housing initiatives that were getting traction, and we didn't want to confuse or compete. And so but now they're looking for additional support there also this year. So
Would that go through our housing authority, or is that something else?
it's uncertain at this point. And that money would not be available until next July.
A year from now?
So.
Is that for transitional housing? What type of housing are we talking about?
So I think, we just finished discussions with 30 different focus groups around a behavioral health master plan. We met with pretty much every aspect of behavioral health. And in every group, the issue of housing came up. It's really a barrier it's one of the biggest barriers that people with substance use disorder, with opioid use disorder face. There's just not enough affordable housing. And so, far too often we're discharging people from treatment programs to the streets. And so treatment providers and others are recognizing there's a need for more affordable housing or for assistance programs to help people in early recovery. So that's what we're trying to work through in terms of the detail. And if you have ideas or suggestions or people that you want to help us develop a proposal, and I'd love to work with them. We also, this was funded actually 2 years ago. Representative Ward from Davis County ran a proposal to provide funding to increase services for pregnant and postpartum women. And Intermountain received that contract. They're also working with Roseman University. I heard this morning that they're actually working with the Intermountain facilities here in Weber to get that going. So Intermountain has some funding to improve care for pregnant and postpartum women here in Weber County. And then the other opportunity that I'm aware of is the legislature provided $1.3 million to fund community health centers through the Association of Utah Community Health, so the federally qualified health clinics. They're still in process. That funding went to the Office of Rural Health within the Department of Health and Human Services, and I have not heard that they have made awards yet. But if there's a it's more targeted at rural areas, so maybe not Weber County, but possibly Morgan. But I'm not sure there's a federally qualified health center there. So that money's probably going elsewhere.
You know, if the one here in Weaver County can cover Lower Morgan.
It'd probably be a question for the Office of Rural Health, but I can help connect you there. But I think they're really targeting rural communities through that system with federally qualified health centers, and they have more than 30 FQHCs around the state. So might be a tough sell.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what we're doing with our money. The other thing that happened is our office was given responsibility to report on the use of the opioid funds. So we're going to be tracking all of these projects and getting reports from them and reporting back to Social Services Appropriations. We're also working with the Utah Association of Counties and would love to include some reporting from the counties on the use of this issue. As I've worked with the committee, one of the issues that they're very concerned about is that we work together collaboratively and that we don't, we don't fail due to a lack of coordination. So I'm available to come to meetings, or my staff is available to come out and work with you to talk through things. We want to be partners. I'm not here to dictate how you should use your money. But we'd love to work together to solve this problem. In terms of the next question that was asked to me was basically, okay, what should Weber County do with our money? And, you don't have to follow the roadmap that we've provided in terms of just funding the projects that and prioritizing the way that we did. But what I would encourage you to do is look at some documents that have been developed by national organizations to guide states and municipalities on the use of the opioid settlement funds. And I think it was John Hopkins who originally developed what they call the core principles. And as I was looking at it this morning, these core principles have been adopted by not just Johns Hopkins at this point, but the American Medical Association, the American Society of Addiction Medicine, and others. When I went back to the National Governors Association, there were 5 or 6 states that were using these core principles to guide their spending. And so I'll just go through those really quickly.
Sure.
And maybe, maybe stimulate some thinking. The first thing I would say is spend money to save lives. This is a crisis that's impacted individuals, families, and communities across the state. I would hate to see this money just supplant existing resources or funding. It's a great opportunity to build new programs, try out, pilot new ideas, to mitigate the harms that have been created by the opioid crisis. What I would also say is don't spend all the money at once. I think it was really smart for the state to, the settlement's coming in front loaded, right? And so you're getting big checks right now. Your checks are going to decrease over time. So the state created a restricted account and we've spread that money over 18 years. And that allows you to spend the money responsibly. If you tried to just dump, at the state level, I think in one year we had, $18 million of new funding. I would be fearful of what would happen with that because we just don't have the capacity or the infrastructure to spend that kind of money one time. And then when you spend it, what do? It's just not sustainable. So think about sustainability. The other thing is,
How much do they put in the restricted account then?
all of the funding from the settlement is going into the restricted account.
Okay.
So, and any money that we don't spend goes back to the restricted account, which is wise. Don't spend the money on things that Medicaid will pay for, right? It would be one way to create leverage is to not use this money in a way that when other dollars could bring leverage, right? So, paying just for treatment services with this money may not be the best approach. Filling in the gaps or thinking of new creative ways to expand what Medicaid can provide, that can make some sense. And I know that Jed and Kevin can assist with those discussions. Johns Hopkins also said use evidence to guide spending, which I think is always smart. And I'm sure and I know from the people that I've worked with up here that that's really important to pretty much all the partners here. They recommend investing in youth prevention. And so I've been doing this for more than 20 years. And we think about prevention across the lifespan, but if we can save this next generation from even starting to use alcohol or other drugs, we can save an incredible amount of money. And almost every study that I've seen identifies that if you spend $1 in primary prevention, over time you get $18 back. And so thinking through working with your prevention system, your health department, your other partners in prevention would be a really wise use of this money.
Is there anybody in the state that's come out with a good program on prevention? Any counties?
Yeah, we actually, there's a lot of great programs here in Weber.
Okay.
But there's absolutely, I think that what I would say, if you have questions about what's working, what's not, we have an evidence-based work group that evaluates and vets programs. So if you've got an idea that you want to try out, Susanna can put you in touch with us. There's a tremendous amount of research on what works and what doesn't work. Scare tactics, bad idea. Don't do it. There's you're wasting your money. Media campaigns that aren't really connected to sort of grassroots, organic, ongoing initiatives, probably not the best use of the money either. So work with the prevention experts to create a public health approach to reducing opioid use going forward. You know, I think it's critical that there's a nexus between how we use this money and the people who were actually impacted by the crisis. My biggest fear, there's so many needs in social services, there's so many needs in state and county government. And this is a lot of money. It's honestly not enough money to solve some of these big major problems, but it's enough money to fight about. And I think one test, if I were thinking about any idea, would be is what's the nexus to people who were actually harmed by this crisis? It would be a shame if we spent this money and didn't do anything about the opioid epidemic. So make sure that you're investing in programs and policies that are gonna help mitigate the issues that have been created. And I know that may be a little vague, but it's just there are a lot, we have one senator who uses the word sacred to describe this opportunity, because it's so rare and unique to be able to have this kind of money to invest to solve a problem like this. Really challenge your people to identify how this is going to reduce opioid use, if it's a prevention idea, or how it's going to help someone get better, and follow the evidence. I've been in this field long enough, and this doesn't come from Weaver, but we often have treatment providers and programs who, pitch a magic bullet or some new unique strategy that no one's ever really heard of. I'd be skeptical of those. There's plenty of research and literature on what works in treatment. If I were, medication assisted treatment is one of the best tools in our toolbox right now, and the literature pretty much supports that. So look for ways to expand the use of medication responsibly and connect it with the kinds of services that Weaver Human Services provides, and that's how you'll provide the best treatment with these dollars. And then this is my pledge to you, and I hope that you look at it this way too. I think we have an absolute need to be transparent in what we do with this money. Our plan is to put forward a public website that describes all these projects, the outcomes that we're getting, so that by the end of the 3 years, we'll know which one of our projects worked, which ones didn't, and how we need to retool and modify. But we need to think about developing fair and transparent processes for these spending decisions. So I didn't come planning just to present. I'd love to have more of a conversation. If that works, or I can keep marching through this.
No, I think that's great. Why don't we go to questions? So
Sure.
we've got our experts here with Weaver Human Services and obviously Weaver Morgan Health. So it sounds like, Kevin, you pretty much are on board with what's available right now and how that fits in with the programs that you anticipate using.
Our original plan and current plan is to endorse what the state has set up. All the things that Brent just talked about goes back to our founding plan.
Okay.
It's okay to say that you disagree on something too.
Those principles is what governed us originally. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Answer or maybe ask a question with that. Has our county decided discretionary funds or an average amount that we're safe with over the 18 years to use? Have you all decided?
The answer to that is no, we have not. And that's why we wanted to have this meeting. So one of the items we'll be discussing during budget session, working with John Park, is to look at that. And I've thought about using that same concept that the state's done. We've done very successfully with the restricted fund. And again, I think that our plan would be to follow in line with, we don't want to make an 18-year commitment. I think that the 3-year probably, that's up for discussion, probably makes sense. But we want to have a very limited time. and we need some type of metrics to see the results. So, you know, we want to we've done that with public defenders here and made it very clear. We want to see the outcome. So that whatever we do with the county, from my perspective, will be outcome based. We're not just going to fund programs because, you know, they have to be the program of the day coming from whatever. We want to fund programs that work. We don't necessarily want to increase our FTEs. We want to have people that work in the field that will go to prevention, will go to solve the problems. I couldn't agree with you more. And that's the part that we have to kind of filter through, is everybody has these new programs come out. Well, how does that water get to the end of that row? And at the end of the day, that's what these funds should be used for. You know, not to give anybody, you know, a pay raise or to create some fancy program.
Absolutely. Could I summarize where I think we are then?
Yeah, go ahead.
We did endorse Jim's, request already, and I don't know total dollars, but that'll be part of your average of what you decide. If everyone agreed about the state dollars that could be matched, the 20% required that we would have would be 40,000 to pull down the 200,000 for MHE in the jail. Prevention, we're covered under a different mechanism currently.
Right, and then we would want to support the other larger substance use prevention and emergency response plan that is through the health department.
Right, but that's still with your dollars that are already allocated.
No, so the dollars that we got are going towards, because the requirement from the state and the legislature was to have coalition, like the outcome that they wanted to see were new coalitions and then ultimately decrease in substance use rates. Those are the two outcomes. So that's where we put our money into.
Okay, so.
So from
that
the
would require
county,
additional county dollars to do that, so
Correct.
that's something we'll have to consider.
Okay.
And then, the bridges is already gonna be funded through the state, and that
So
was,
bridges will be funded without county help.
and we didn't have to match it, it sounds like.
No, we'd love to see you, you're more than welcome to expand or augment that money.
So we had an
It's not
original
required.
proposal on what that was gonna cost, so I just don't know how much Weaver County will be getting. If and when we go through that process, but that would bring us to where we are currently.
Okay.
And then if we could decide an average, then the community should decide how is the best way to spend the rest.
Well, as far as I think that, you know, we're in agreement that, again, that's the reason we wanted to have rent come up, is to look at these matches. It seems to me the 20% match for that program is dollars well spent.
That's what we think too.
So I don't think that's an issue.
And can I just clarify, so the Bridges program doesn't come with a match, that one is just.
It's the jail.
straightforward. It's the jail medication.
This is the jail medication.
That does.
Yeah, no,
And I do want to say, we haven't even received the RFP on the bridges.
We don't know.
So and there are only 4 counties that are going to get this.
Yeah, it's a
I believe.
Yeah, there's 1.2 million available.
So we don't even know if we're gonna get it. We hope we do. And then also I'll just mention, we have a couple of other things that certainly we would love to be funded, such as safe and sober living, again, continue with that, reentry. We've got some recovery supports that need to be done, which includes housing, the first month's rent, those types of things. We've got some other things that could be added into there that were in our original proposal. But we came today just saying we're gonna support what's already out there from the state. And we'd love to see a match for those dollars in the jail.
I think the match is an easy sell.
Yeah, that's great. And
And as far as those others, you know, John Bond, Linnell, Brooke, you know, they're in charge of evaluating any of those additional requests that you see.
Sure.
I'd probably get those to them as soon as possible. Well, you know, in the next couple of weeks, because we'll be making some decisions on that restricted account here fairly soon.
Okay.
And we don't want to overspend that or overcommit.
So do we want to pull the community back together to evaluate and determine the best use of that? Or we did that originally and it was part of the community, but I don't know if there's any new ideas.
Yeah, the sheriff was on board with this and some others, and I think we can go back on that request and pull out what we think we're going to get from the state already. And then resubmit a new proposal. I think a lot of it.
But then you'll hopefully know what your restrictions.
And then what we'll do is have that whoever is interested in the community come in, the sheriff, et cetera, go over those suggestions or recommendations from John Bond's office at that point in time for feedback. That's what we want to do.
So I just want to make sure one other component with what was received to prevention is that there is a requirement for match, but it was there's not a 50-50 match. It's nothing, it's just they wanted to see the counties put towards something towards prevention. And in my eyes, if something goes towards community health, is that the right? It's no longer public, it's no longer health prevention. Yeah, but community health, that would be something I would still consider because Bryce and I work so closely together to achieve the same goals.
Correct.
So,
No, I think
okay.
any of those type of programs we need to be made aware of and, yeah, obviously want to support that.
Okay.
Yeah. Brian, anything from your side?
No, Commissioner, I think, our department's been willing to work closely with Weber Human Services to make sure that we're collaborating on how these funds are used. I didn't really want to be in competition with the other entities for these funds, more so in a supporting role and making sure that we're working with them to do the best we can.
Okay, so you see that Weber Human Services probably in the best position to kind of take the lead on these various programs.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I think it falls under their wheelhouse a little bit better than it does in ours at the health department.
And I would agree with that, yeah. So I think Kevin's kind of in your court at this point in time to get those proposals in, let us evaluate them, and then obviously we'll look, anybody else in the community that comes in with, ideas that they think are worthy of discussion, we'll listen to them. And I think this housing component that you bring up is very critical. I think we should probably have a discussion with Andy Beatles, with Housing Authority. There may be potential for some grants from the feds as well. Since that's a lot of those funds come down from HUD.
Yeah, I agree.
Another housing program.
Yeah, and that's, we're trying to very carefully coordinate with the existing state programs for housing so that we're not creating confusion and I'm not sure if our office is gonna take the lead on that or the Department of Workforce Services, honestly, in terms of the proposal. But what I can say is that literally every group that I've talked to who's watching this money has brought up the issue of housing.
Yeah, to me, that's crucial. We gotta have a roof over their head. Where to start, Kira? John, anything else?
No, I think we're covered on territory. You're okay. We just got another couple of minutes. We can wrap up, or if you want to take another couple of questions, whatever you'd like.
Yeah, any questions? So public defenders, we actually, I think the only use, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, has been going to Daniel for his work in the jails right now.
That's the only thing we spent money on so far.
That's the only money we spent. And I think, Daniel, you had some stats the other day that shows that some of that success is already starting to bear fruit from a public defender standpoint.
Yeah, we've engaged in 66 direct new referrals. We've resolved about 20 of those cases. Some of them, I'm sure, will cycle back. Recidivism takes time. But I've been able to, with that, acquire new money from the IDC to hire a social worker funded that way and really build community partners with treatment providers. I love the focus on not spending money on what Medicaid will spend money on. Medicaid will never pay for me because I'm not a treatment provider, even though I have the credentials, right? But my ability as air traffic control, so to speak, of social services to connect people to relevant Weber Human Services or private treatment providers. And I think there may be opportunities down the road to focus on juveniles. The juvenile justice system is already, nothing is really well funded, but it's pretty well funded. And I think there may be opportunities to look for prevention within juveniles involved in JJS services. But yeah, we're focused on taking this funding to make future funding, invest in the good. And Weber Human Services has been an amazing partner. I don't want to throw shade, but it's been quite a much more delightful experience to work with Weber Human Services than my experience in Salt Lake County. I'll leave it at that.
I will, Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bowles, any questions or comments?
Just one
Going
comment, sounds like, initially we asked for a structured application process and it doesn't look like we're going in that direction, which I'm okay with. It sounds like requests will just come to John and his team and recommendations, like,
Should we explore that for
be
just a
it in
second?
this format is my question.
Initially, what we thought we'd do is take a poll in the community of those smaller entities that could provide input. Obviously, I love the John Hopkins stuff, we've been through all that stuff here with the blueprint, the exhibits and stuff like that. We've got a foundation of all that. Do we live it every day? No, we do accounting and finance. You guys do the real world. I really respect that and recognize that. So first of all, thank you for what you're doing. But I thought what we try and do is capture 3 or 4 interviews with the larger entities, the sheriff, health department, maybe human services, and just sit with you for a while and just learn a lot. If we can do that over the next month or two, wonderful. I thought we'd then send out a poll to the smaller entities so we can hear their voice of 10 or 20 different entities that are smaller, but you can get their voice and let them present that maybe through a doodle or some type of polling type thing. We thought we'd capture that, bring all that together, condense it with advice that we've gotten from all of you, bring it to the commissioners and frame that into helping the commissioners learn, all the stuff that's out there, let them develop what the scope is that they think is important with all this input. That may take a month or two to get that information and a scope in front of the commissioners of options of the scope. Once that scope is prepared, then have them go out and start to receive requests, applications at that point that fit that scope. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't know the county processes as well as every county works a little bit differently, so I don't know that I can speak to that. What I could say is, as you go through this process, if you have additional questions, or if we've made a decision that's making your life miserable, in terms of a program requirement or else, please reach out and let's have a discussion about this and we can kind of learn from each other. And it takes some time to get it right. So I appreciate the idea of a process, and I appreciate even the idea of this meeting with everyone that's here to really start thinking about the highest and best use of the money. So I don't think there's a wrong or right.
Okay, obviously, public defender's already got somebody out of the kitty. This matching stuff obviously needs special attention more quickly, and I think that if we can address that. But I come back to that point of gathering data for you, commissioners, having that scope prepared by you as for where you want to go, then finding what entities in the community can help move that forward. We've got, $1.5 million in the bank right now. We haven't got the July 300,000 yet, so I suspect we'll probably have $1.9 million by the end of the year. Is what we're looking at. We don't spend it all at once. If we have at least a budget, we look at a 3-year window is probably my recommendation as far as our also mimicking that same 3-year budget, so to speak, in a sense, and looking at the events that could occur in the next 3 years, budget for them, have some set aside for other issues perhaps, and but getting that scope in the next couple of months refined, and then seeing who in the community best can attack that scope and get after it.
And clarify,
Okay.
I really liked the idea of an average over 18 years, so that money stretches for 18 years. So I'm not, is that what you were framing it, or you kind of talked about that front loaded money?
It's really interesting to hear this 18-year window, and we've got the latest greatest from the new act, which gives us a couple more donors into the pool, and currently they're looking at 20 million for our 18-year window. We've got to see how we can budget that, and I think it's a very, very relevant question to now introduce into our discussions.
Because even if we change, at the end of the 3-year cycle, I just think having that amount kind of set is a really good idea, that make sure it stretches.
Yeah.
And I'll leave this with you. This is the schedule of payments.
Yeah.
And then the way the state has structured what's available for appropriation within the 200.
Good to have, yeah.
Once we get the 20% out for the attorneys.
Right, and
What are the attorneys here?
so, and it's, we just sort of evaluated the payments and decided what was high risk, what was low risk. It was low risk, we made it available.
It's another good discussion point. So.
And then we tried to push the money from the first years through the 18 years of the settlement, to make sure that whatever we started would be sustainable.
Yeah. I'm trying to summarize quickly. Does that game plan somewhat seem okay for the next couple of months?
I think that's a good plan.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Commissioner, you okay?
we know we've been dragging our feet a little bit on this.
You have a responsibility, and I can.
But, you know, we wanted to make sure we get this right for the same, all the reasons that were discussed today. This has to be done once, it has to be done right. And that's why John Bond's kind of hitting the bus on this to make sure we get there. And, but, you know, I would say that for those, once the state comes out with this program, with the jail program, they're ready for the match, then I think that needs to move to the top of the list, John.
That'd be wonderful.
So we don't want to miss an opportunity, to put it that way.
Thank you, great.
For sure.
I think our time is there. Anything else?
So, Commissioner Harvey. Okay, anybody else?
Commissioner, can I mention something just real quick?
Go ahead.
It kind of seems like Weaver Human Services is coming in here and asking we want all this money.
Yes, it does.
And we have no interest, and me personally, I have no interest in overseeing a couple of other programs with millions of dollars coming in, right? It really is a stretch for us administratively to add anything. But we do have a pattern of doing things in an evidence-based manner. And I do believe that we've been used to running programs in a fiscally responsible manner. And so I think we're asking to help oversee this and then disseminate the money out to partners and make sure that they're using that in a fiscally responsible way and in an evidence-based manner as well. For instance, with the jail, we're gonna funnel this money right to them for personnel to run medication-assisted treatment in the jail. If we get this other program for the bridge program, we're going to work with USERRA in our community and give that money to them. We will oversee and make sure that things are going well. We don't necessarily want to run all of these programs.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure people understand.
No, I appreciate that. It's good clarification, but you know, you guys really have the expertise and professionalism to make sure this runs right. And that's why we're depending on you, Kevin, and you guys to make sure this doesn't. So I think that's how we see it. Now, that doesn't mean that we might not have a community partner that comes in with a great idea that's also supported by the state and go that way too.
And that's what I don't wanna, that's what I wanna make sure we don't miss.
Yeah, we're not gonna, yeah. We wanna make sure that everybody has a shot to give their best project-based, outcome-based proposal on the table. We have time to evaluate and then make the decision. So. Anyway, Brent, anything else?
Just thank you for your leadership and your willingness to take this issue on. And like I said, if we can be of help, please reach out.
Good. So this goes to social service approach committee.
So the projects I talked about have been approved. We're moving them out the door.
But you talked about for next year's approach.
Next year, there is that additional, those new settlements that have been reached. It looks like there's another $208 million. That may be available over the course of this next 18 years, and the counties will get half of that. We'll get half of that, and so there'll be a new round of proposals this year.
Are you aware of that, Chris?
And so it's, yeah, we're probably not the last meeting we'll have.
Okay.
All future settlements, the parties, the state and the counties have agreed to a 30%.
Right. Our percent will be set. Yeah, just a matter whether they're successful in getting those outcomes. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Are you coming down this week to the?
I'm not gonna be in town. I will.
Thanks, Brent.
It's all good.
Another one. I'll be sweet.
Okay, see you. Well, you know, yeah.
That's good.
We were fortunate, we're the only Kevin here, in getting us the funds. We hired Daniel Shines, Dr. Blake, as the head of our forensic session committee. And we received some fantastic results of that. He was out of Salt Lake County, and then when IDC's funded another social work LDA and building a social work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
explains that a lot.
He's ours.
So I really like her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so I have not seen a proposal that you see, but there is one somebody that's available. Thank you too. Good job.
Debbie, it looks like you're up next on Black Pine.
Yeah. Boy, that was a tough one. No, I've got. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I had to do. I thought I had a kidney stone, so I medicated up. So I'm feeling it. It's okay.
And it was
We'll
exciting.
see how it goes. Right now, it's not too bad, but I'm feeling really good, man. I'm so medicated up.
Right, nice to meet you.
Oh, one was back. It was such terrible feeling. Yeah, that. This is round 5 for me. I've had. Oh, yeah. It's okay. That's where. I see. Yeah, that's. Stay with it.
He says, he's not even on the table. I don't know why.
It's different money though, right?
Well, he says they could probably be good again for some money.
You want me to?
Yeah, I agree.
So what about?
Great, thank you.
My
And thank you
Yeah.
for supporting us.
He just said, I'm like the air traffic controller, and I'm going, that's precisely what the.
Come on, Jim.
It's like an email. I sent him a text. I sent him a
That's
text.
true.
Daniel,
He with?
he's with, Jim Todd.
Oh, he's with.
How come,
Works in the gym.
Good to
hey
see you.
there, how you doing? Good to see you.
Yeah, when he
I
said,
don't- I don't know.
this is it.
No, I'm just.
I thought Bob would be here. Is he doing anything with it?
Yeah, I actually just got a text update from him.
John, how are you?
He's rolling.
Good to see you.
You too.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You making progress?
Feels like
it's been too long. I used to be in here every week. So true. Where did the summer go, right?
Well, it's not a bad thing.
But then we're also.
It never should have got to the point.
like a red tie.
There's always the point, it should have been one person or two coordinating everybody else.
legal department.
And didn't turn into, she was the center of the universe, because we have a clumsy person.
We'll get there. We're closer than you think.
All right, gentlemen. We're here at our 145 discussion regarding Black Pine Inland Port. Stephanie, Sean, Chris, Brandon, Quinn. I don't see Brandon.
Good to see you.
Right over here.
He's in the corner.
Oh, there he is. Wow, he stuck in. Steph, you're up.
Yeah, we'll make this pretty brief. So we have been approached by the Inland Port and by Commentaries Commerce Center Black Pine Development to see if the county would be interested in doing a resolution to adopt them into our inland port area. This would be really beneficial for the county, considering the type of development that Promontory is planning on doing on their acreage. And the inland port is had a couple conversations with them already about the vision and direction that they're going in. And it's very complementary to the vision and direction that we're going in with the inland port on the Litchfield properties as well. So we're here today to answer any questions that the commission might have, and to ask that if you're interested, we'll be able to put a resolution on the agenda next week.
We can do one next week, on the commission agenda, not tomorrow, or if you want to take action, so you can vote on it today, we can come up with the resolution later for you to sign.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just I think Stephanie said it well. It's just, we're very supportive of the idea of being included in the inland port area. I think they bring a lot to support the county and the vision you all have in the area. So we're hopeful that you guys will consider this and we'll be able to get included in the area.
Okay, is the inland port authority on board with this?
Absolutely on board with it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're prepared to start, if the commission decides to go move forward with a project area resolution, they're prepared to get that project area plan completed very quickly, and as early as October, they would get the Litchfield property voted in and their property voted in to the Inland Port Board. So they're prepared to do that and move everything forward before the end of the year.
Got it. Okay, Commissioner Harvey.
Just confirming one more time that our inland port areas do not have to be contiguous,
Not at all.
okay? No, I'm in support of this, Mr. Chair.
You're in support. Commissioner Bolo.
The same.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, Stephanie, and your research.
Yeah, I don't see any.
Yeah, it's a win for everybody at this point. So,
All right, sounds like you gotta go.
sounds good.
Wait.
Brandon,
We take the
Oh,
vote
wait,
now.
wait,
You can take a vote on it now and I'll prepare a
We
resolution
can?
and bring it to you later.
So
can
you,
I hear in this meeting?
Yeah, this isn't considered a legislative.
it's a
action.
legislative action, so you,
We're just asking permission.
It's
for
not-
the
It just says
legislative
discussion,
action. It
Brandon.
does.
Oh, this is
It does.
it does, but we brought Brandon in case it went favorably towards the.
Oh, that's right,
This-
this isn't published.
Right, and this could be
Okay, I'm all right.
even as little as a letter coming from the chair, just inviting the inventory, because they're only doing the project area and budget right now.
Right.
Actual public hearing
and it's not up to us to actually, it's Inland Port Authority Board that actually approves it.
Absolutely.
We're just
yes.
recognizing that we would,
like
Invite them.
Yep, it's like an invitation to our table.
okay, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'll make that motion that we include the aforementioned developments in the inland port area.
okay.
Second,
All those in favor, say aye.
hi,
Aye, motion carries. Thanks. Looks like you're done.
Right, thank you.
thanks for getting us back on schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bet. We'll see you again in 20
Wow,
minutes.
perfect timing. 3 minutes to spare. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
3 minutes to spare means you're not looking at that clock. Why is that clock off?
I don't
It
know.
drives
Hey,
me
Sean,
crazy.
can you do me a favor?
Yes, sir.
Can you pull that clock down? over the wall?
Yes, sir.
Set it to match the
If you'll put it,
TV.
if you'll put it in my office, I'll pull the batteries off of it, put it in my window and then,
How come,
Pull the batteries out for 4 minutes.
how come you have to have it in the window?
because it reads something off the satellite.
Okay, that's what I thought. It looked like it. What's it called?
Do you want us to get different clocks in here that
You
actually?
know who needs a clock, Sean?
Is that-
Sheriff's Office Training Center.
I'd like a clock in my
Two of
office.
them, one in each section.
The
It
last
drives
time
me
I touched
crazy
one of them, I got clocked.
I can't
so I'm
imagine
not
being a
good.
presenter. You don't know what time it is.
Yes,
No, we have
Oh,
3
okay.
minutes.
we need new clocks. They're not solar powered or just regular.
It's atomic.
Atomic.
Is that what it is? I wondered,
Yes,
'cause there
and
was
it
no
can't
place
read
to
as
Just
big
put
as
it in,
a
it's
certain.
gonna work fine.
Sean just takes the clock.
Mine's in the window. Did it reset, you know?
Sean's gonna take his clock and go home. Look at
Do
him.
you really want me to put it in your office?
If you take the batteries out of it for about 30 seconds, put it back in and put it in my window that faces south, it'll line up the way it needs to line up.
Okay, sounds good.
That's a little trick for later.
That works. There you go.
Wow, you broke away.
Wow.
We made it.
That's just over, so we are good.
We have a small little lull before we start again in here in a minute, so I just thought we better squeeze it in.
Well, so I understand you got a curveball thrown at you with regards to merchants in the federal government. Being able.
We did, yes. That's part of it.
After
Yes.
20, 34 years.
Yeah.
or
Well, they
however
have a new
that is.
JAG. Anytime you get a new kernel and things, and then they interpret it, and then they send it over to JAG, and then they interpret it, and then your rules change, because
That's what kind
We've
of
been
slowed
back
us up
and
this
forth.
morning. But,
Yeah.
But it's okay, we just adapt. It's
So
just-
next year we'll adapt it and we'll have it on the registration, so they'll pre-register with it. I think so,
That's good.
but we heard about it, 2 weeks prior.
So did you get it solved?
Oh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
solved and it's working, it's doing just fine.
Yeah.
Actually, it brought in about $5,600 more revenue, so there we go.
Truly on the honor system.
Yeah, it's just on the honor system.
All right, so let's start our 2 PM update on the OECC remodel budget. Jennifer's here with us, Marty's here, Cassie's here, Jill's here,
Sit down.
and Scott Park is now here, so we can get started.
Scott Park is here.
Marty, go ahead, or Jennifer, either one, whoever wants to.
Okay, I'll start and then the smart people will weigh in. How's that? Thanks, commissioners. We wanted to come back and clear up our funding for the remodel. We got talking to Scott and we weren't quite on the same page. Our collective and Scott, we somehow misinterpreted, so we wanted to come back and just get clear our funding for this remodel. So we came back, if you
Okay.
remember, and asked for 11.8, you rounded up to 12. Do you remember that conversation?
that.
The first time we came back, then we came back and we thought we were getting $8 million in an inter-fund loan to take us, if you remember the conversation, up to 20. We said we didn't want to spend the 20, but it would put us clear to finish design and the estimates that were coming in for the remodel.
Okay.
I think Scott thinks that we agreed to 17. We thought it was 20, so we all just got together with Scott and decided to come in and clear up what it was you had actually approved for us to finish this remodel. And having said that, Scott, do you have anything, did I say anything wrong there?
No, you're fine. And the question was, so the original 3 that we gave on top of, do you remember how we were going to do 3 with ramp and it just didn't come through?
The
with
3, wasn't it?
Three, yeah. And so we said, okay, we're gonna have to reduce that from future appropriations from what the Culture Parks and Rec can spend. So basically, we were gonna pull that 3 million out and reimburse the capital projects. I wasn't gonna send it up as an interfund loan because I thought, well, we'll delay the project. It'll cross 3 fiscal years, so I can just pull the million out each year. But then when we went to add, you know, to get it up to the 16 million, which was that next cost estimate, I said, okay, that's too much to try to flex. And so we're gonna do an interfund loan. And I just rounded everything together and said $8 million. So that would give a total budget of 17 million. So 16 million was what the budget would be, plus $1 million contingency.
Right.
We assumed the 3 and then another.
And
So you,
Right.
so
they-
you put
went to 12
3
plus
on
the
top.
eight.
Right, we did,
Yeah,
yes.
because we want the 12 plus the 8.
So the last time we looked, though, the budget was 16 million, right?
Yeah,
And
so-
so that's really the question is, what does the
Yeah.
budget need to be? I'll backfill the interfund loan to be whatever that amount is.
Okay.
I
What is
thought,
the budget?
I thought we were talking 16 million, not an 18 million project.
Well, that's where we were confused. We thought it was 20, but I can talk to you about the budget now. We're at about 17.8 without architect's fee and without FF&E, which puts us to about 19.8. We've gone back and said, let's start finding ways we can cut. They're value engineering a lot of things and putting out second and third bids to try to get alternate bids, I should say, with different requests, like in the lighting, full color as opposed to just white, things like that. So, and cooling tower, they found a cheaper cooling tower. So we're starting to try to whittle backwards. But we're afraid to whittle too far because then we'll be into things where you just won't really notice that was even a remodel on some things. So if we, with everything that is in it currently, 19.8, am I correct in saying that about where we are?
Yes.
Without cutting anything?
Yep.
So that's where we are.
Okay,
That includes the architect's fee, that includes FF&E.
okay. So how do we backfill if we do that?
We would have to increase the amount that we're going to borrow from future appropriations, or you'd have to fund it from the county's capital projects account. And those are the only 2 spots to get it. So what I would recommend doing is we would just say, okay, instead of that $8 million loan, it'll be an $11 million loan that will be paid off over the next 10 years out of restricted tourism tax revenue. So we would take the TRCC or the TRT revenues, whatever came in over and above, you know, what we needed for that. And we would sweep that
operations.
first. So the first million, or let's say it's $1.2 million,
Goes to pay
would go to
down.
pay down the debt, and then whatever's left over would be used to fund the operations. Now, we would want to be careful because if we get too much going to a debt service payment, we're eventually going to run out of money in that fund, and then the general fund's going to have to step in and start covering the shortfalls. So we're kind of doing a balancing act here. But as long as we're able, you know, and it depends too on what happens with the ice sheet and what we decide to do with the Golden Spike renovations and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and that, we currently, and if I get this wrong, Scott, let me know, but we've currently had a bit of a surplus every year after operations that Scott has been funding our CIPs with, still out of the tourism fund for the most part.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit there, but we also don't know what the economy is gonna do, right? And it's been flattening a little bit, so, you know, that's a bit of a concern, but we really haven't been using too much general fund.
So the last couple of years, you haven't used any general fund, and we actually have about $2 or $3 million in
Sitting there.
that fund balance that's saved. So,
Yeah.
so that's spoken to, well, and part of that is because we haven't done any big major capital
Yeah.
project repairs. So
Yeah.
we're covering the operating costs with that tourism tax revenue. We're not covering the capital project costs with that. But, you know, we have started to build up a little bit. So let's just assume we're gonna make $2 million a year over and above the operating loss to use for capital projects. Well, now I'm taking $1 million or $1.2 million of that to pay back a debt service payment. So now you have $800,000 a year, not $2 million a year to maintain your facilities.
Okay, Commissioner Harvey, this is in your portfolio.
Listen, they've done a lot of work in preparation getting here. My memory was it was gonna go up to 20. I thought we sat here and we said, hey, listen, up to 20, that's the ceiling. So that's where I am on it.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Bolos?
That's my recollection too. I'm sorry, Scott, but I don't know why.
That's fine. I went back and I watched the actual transcript of this meeting, and when I said it, I said I was gonna roll those in together into one, and so in my mind, that meant the 3 million plus 5 million gets you the 8 million.
Right.
But and that's why we just wanted to clarify.
And somehow we remembered the 20 stuck in our heads and we were saying, please don't spend 20 if you don't have to, because I remember that
Right.
conversation. But-
Okay,
But that's fine. So we just wanted to clarify with you.
so we're just gonna make it 11 then, 11 million.
So you tell me what the total project budget is for the capital projects and whatever the difference is between the 12 million you've already funded. Excuse me, with the 9 million you've already
9
funded
million.
and whatever that total is, that
And
will be
we'll
the
look.
amount for the interfund loan.
So if we just talk like we did the last meeting that we thought we heard, if we did 20 and we start to whittle down best we can, which we're already doing, we started doing that. Is everybody comfortable with that? I don't want to do anything that we're uncomfortable with, but I mean, I hate taking out loans altogether, but
Right.
Well, we don't have a choice, that's the only place we can take it.
Well, unless you wanted to give, I mean, because the county's already given 9 million out of the county's capital projects.
we've
If you
already-
wanted to dip in more into that, but then you've got to worry about
Yeah.
the parking structure and,
Yeah.
you know, so we're gonna be running into competing priorities. So I would say, first off, let's see if we can just use
Yeah.
the tourism
Okay.
dollars. And if something happens, if we run into something really big, maybe we'll have to come back and have another conversation.
Okay.
we've pulled out a couple things that Cassie thinks she can handle in this year's CIP funds already. That we're trying to whittle off of that project to try to get done early and outside of.
And then
So,
we're also hoping to, with fundraising and some grant writing and things with 100-year to help to offset some of those costs as well and whittle some of that down, because this remodel includes some of those mezzanine and the dressing rooms and things. So if we get some funding there, we're hoping to be able to, you know, put it back in to offset this as well.
I appreciate you guys doing that and recognizing that we wanna stay safe financially and do the work that we
yeah,
can to.
absolutely.
Right.
These projects are tough. I said that in department head, it's amazing how, you know, even in June, the architects estimated it 14 plus, and here we are. It's, I don't know how you can get a job done and know what to even estimate. It's
Well,
tough.
We're closer. You've got a lot more information to
Yeah.
than you did in June, and so.
Right.
We ought to, I don't expect something coming back and say, hey, we need another 10. If
Right.
that ever happens, then we fire the architect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a.
No, it's creeped up a little, but also know that, yeah, we are whittling it down and we're just to the point where we've got to give them a hard number and what that final is. Because we're 6 to 8 months out on our HVAC and chiller. And if we don't order by like the 22nd, they're telling us that we're looking at having to change all the phasing of the remodel.
So what
Because we won't have our product.
What we did is, we're gonna continue to operate, and so we've taken the business that Cassie has booked next year. And we pushed it into the corners of the building, depending on what phase they're remodeling, so
Right.
she's gonna stay open and they phased it. With delays in equipment now, the phasing would be all out of phase, right? So they said we had to get the chiller ordered by September 26th, or we'll miss our window.
You gotta do that. I mean, that's because that matters with the TRT tax.
And so that's why we're here, because we didn't want to commit without having the sign off from you.
Okay.
That's why we're here.
All right. So, Harvey, you're okay with that? Sharon?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I'm gonna put on your commission agenda an $11 million line of credit. It's ready to go. I just needed that final number, so I'll put that in there. We're
okay,
gonna,
11 million.
You comfortable with that?
I do whatever you wanna do, commissioners. I think.
My question is, does that happen?
I'm sorry, what?
Does that happen, that those loans a lot or not?
Um,
Frequently or?
I don't know how common they are throughout the state. There is a statute that governs it. It's better for us because we have, so the transportation projects, they're always delayed. They always say they're gonna spend it this year. So we have $40 million of cash in the bank. And I would hate to go out and borrow money on a private loan, you know, with the bank and then pay them that interest when I have $40 million sitting in transportation funds. So that's where we're gonna loan the money from. And we'll pay the interest. So the transportation will make a little bit more than keeping it in PTIF. We'll pay a little bit less than going to a bank. So it's a win-win all the way around. Yeah.
It's a thing.
Well, I'm with you, Commissioner. I mean, absolutely, you know, the comfort level, I look to Scott first, right? Because I just don't wanna put us in, any of us in a position where we're
Right.
absolutely not comfortable, so.
Well, I mean, we've had this conversation, we'll have it again in the budget cycle, you know, the facilities that we manage with that tourism is, we have one big facility too many, in my
Yeah.
opinion, in order
Yeah.
to be sustainable in the long run. So unless that changes, or unless we significantly change the scope of what they do, we're gonna come back to this again
Yeah,
and again and say, it's not enough, we need some general fund or capital project fund appropriations.
Okay,
Well, hopefully we'll solve one of our problems.
yeah, that's a thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds like you got to go,
Thank you, Commissioner.
but yeah, let's definitely not go over that. I think
Yeah.
we go over that 20 million.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they've already been.
So I would tell them, you know, we're looking somewhat less than 20 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Because anytime you tell an architect or contractor that open your checkbooks, they're gonna use it.
Oh, absolutely. In
So that's
fact,
10%.
yeah, consultants
Right.
too, like the
Checkbook's
Sure.
closed.
electrical consultant, the AV consultant, they all do
Yeah.
the same thing too, so.
They do.
We've
They
met.
put the
Well,
max,
hopefully you're
and then
making that
take
very
it.
clear.
Absolutely. In fact,
Yeah.
we're going line by line on things,
Okay,
just
Yeah.
making sure that.
yeah.
We've already been cutting some.
That'll
things.
be flat out disaster if you come back and say, look, we
No,
need
we-
another million or two, you know, as far as I'm concerned,
We
you come in
won't.
for another $100.
No, we'll just have to.
You have my
not
word,
do
we're
it.
not going to do that.
Conversation's over.
It's over.
Yeah.
Kate says the conversation
We
is
will
over.
not be done.
Yeah.
We will not be back.
Thank you.
So at that point in time, you better start firing people to come up with a line. So you decide who heads rolls if you're gonna do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Appreciate
In other
it.
words, don't do it.
Oh, We will, on that positive note.
Yeah.
I told him, you can always count on Commissioner Brewer to give it to you like it is, so.
All right, get after it.
Thank you. Boy,
20
Eddie,
million bucks.
Eddie,
Jeez,
Listen, if they
that's,
don't,
that's a lot of money.
if they don't do it now, they're gonna have to do it in the future.
Yeah. It'd be nice just to have a little support from our friends at Ogden City.
it would be nice since they're the ones that benefit the most off the sales tax.
Exactly. Who
I
puts
still
more-
haven't been caught up to speed on Ogden City.
Well,
There's obviously
we're going to have a
great deal of love and
work
affection.
session next week for our near and dear Brandon Cooper and economic development. So you'll hear a good share of it.
Jim promised the mayor today that we'd start back to some regular luncheons or something.
You did?
Yeah,
With Caldwell?
yeah,
Why would we do that?
and
Mara.
Mara Brown,
Really?
yeah,
Was Caldwell interested in that?
yeah, very.
No. Not that has any
He's
longevity.
interested in anything at this point, right?
He never shows up to his other meetings.
But we'll see if he comes to the place on wall.
The what?
So did you set a date for that?
No, I forgot to tell the gals, we'll do it.
All right,
What is that?
steakhouse.
And we usually get steak.
Is it Longhorn?
Longhorn.
Longhorn Steakhouse.
He did mention that.
Okay.
Not ordering your steak, even though you were just still working the room.
He mentioned that.
He mentioned Jim
Listen,
waving to the people.
Did he?
Wave to the people. Which I did in the parade, by the way.
Thanks for doing that,
you did a
even though
good
you didn't
job.
have a convertible. I mean, you had one, but the
I had a convertible.
roof was up.
So
It was raining.
Was Mike there this morning?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Was he? Well, I want to start having some meetings with our potential mayor-elect, so
You gonna pick one or the other?
I am.
Pretty easy.
I don't think there's much of a Hey, Brent, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I need a 6-foot low profile bucket for quick release like a skid steer, but it'd go on a Kubota. You know where they're in? Is in where there is? I can find one of those.
How big a bucket?
72. For the Kubota tractor, but it's gonna be a quick attach.
Yeah, with the skid steer quick attach, right?
Right.
I would try. I'll bet that Bonneville Equipment, the new Kubota dealer out there in Far West, would have one.
Okay, I'll go ask him. Thanks a million.
You betcha.
Oliver.
Great, thank you.
That's what I want.
All right. Appreciate you coming just a little early. We're here to talk about the 2:30 discussion regarding the MT zone amendment. Bill?
Yes, sir.
Cobabe's here with us, Sean, Rick, Charlie, Dallin over here with us, and Daniel Stevens. Okay, let's go. Bill?
Okay. This is gonna be short and sweet. I like that we're early, get us out of here early and.
Yeah, we like that too, especially Commissioner Bolos.
I think you guys know what this is. It was identified in the review of the zone as approved, that there was a requested and desired additional use. So we just added that onto this table. It said data services. It's on the very last item on the last row there. And we're proposing that that be allowed in all of the manufacturing type zones except the MV1. Because the valley likes to be special. But these are all the areas out west that are in the M zone and would be affected by this, and including the M&T zoning district. So that's our proposal. The applicant's here if you have any questions or concerns, but otherwise, I think this is pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. Questions, commissioners? Stephanie, any comments?
No, I think it's would be, yes, I do.
Basically, we're talking
Sorry.
data centers.
Yeah.
A lot of data centers in there.
Well, can I tell you why we're kind of interested in data centers in that area right now? Is that data centers have switched over to a air cooling system, so it doesn't impact our water. And secondly, we do have some labor shortages in the county, and data centers bring in a lot of CapEx with very low employee requirements. And traditionally, that is not something that you'd hear from an economic developer. But considering where we're at in our development process in the United States with labor, data centers are a really good use of investment into these types of areas.
Okay. Questions, comments?
For me.
Art?
None.
All right, what do you need from us?
We'd like to get this on the agenda next week, Tuesday.
Okay.
If that's acceptable, we'll get that, we'll work with the staff, get that on the agenda. If that's okay with you.
Do it.
Okay, we've had a public hearing at the planning commission level. We've got a recommendation from them. So we'll get this in front of you
So
next
the
week.
plan, yeah, that was gonna be my last question. Planning commission's approved it.
Yep, unanimous.
Okay, all right, should be no brainer, guys. Daniel?
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
go for it. John, you're up on this next one.
Yeah, they're way ahead of schedule.
Oh, we're
pretty efficient. Once you get the notes, you'll find that.
Sorry, we're gonna let Stephanie run with this one,
Is
but
Brandon coming up?
Yeah, I need Brandon. He's got the agreement.
I fixed the clock. Do you want me to bring it back in?
You did.
Let me,
Did you
By
get
sitting it in the window?
But I put it in the window, but I just readjusted it. I just
Okay, that'll work.
set it the right way.
Hopefully it doesn't get off again.
You'll have to show me how you adjust that. I never could figure out a way to adjust it manually.
Yeah, I didn't know that you could adjust those
I-
atomic clocks
I
manually.
couldn't find a spot.
okay, I'll get Brandon up there. Paige, in your MIDA meetings, have they mentioned how long the length of that trail would be for the 3-gate trail?
How long?
Yeah. I can email Ariana, but I don't know if you might know off the top. of your
I
head.
emailed her. I thought it was around 10 miles,
Oh,
10 and a
that's not
half,
bad. Okay.
but I'm not positive.
I'm trying to do a grant for, a TAP grant, and I need an assistant.
Look at that.
Sean knows.
It's working, Harv.
So based on my iPhone, we are 3 seconds off.
Wow.
Which way?
We're 3 seconds slow.
Oh, gee.
Wow.
That's okay. We'll be okay.
That should just be our motto.
Be okay.
That should be our motto, not be okay. 3 seconds, we're just.
3 seconds off.
So for 3 seconds, I will
One,
say
two,
the
three,
wrong.
we're 3 seconds
So
slow.
right now, it's going to be. Oh, no, maybe I'm 3 seconds fast, just kidding.
I think you're 3 seconds fast.
I'm 3 seconds.
You are.
fast.
Okay,
Yes.
that works.
Okay, rather be fast.
3 seconds ahead of time.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that works.
Sean,
Yeah.
do you know how long the 3-gate trail is going to be? The length of it?
The length of it?
Yeah.
3 point something, it's 6 point something miles.
It's more than that, isn't it?
It's 6
I thought it was
point.
Under 3.
On the Weaver County side,
On the
you gotta
Weaver
take
County
into
side.
Davis side
Davis,
too.
all the way from Hill Air Force Base.
I think it's 6 point something miles. Let's just put a little something on this now.
Okay.
I'm trying to get some money.
You're talking to Weaver County. Are you applying just for Weaver County or?
Yeah.
Do you want me to just reach out to Ariana real quick?
If you've got her phone number.
Oh, come
call her.
on.
I was gonna send her an
I'm
email.
no threat.
But we gotta apply for the Davis or make sure the Davis side's,
Do you want me to apply for TAP for them too?
well, or get a hold of somebody in Davis to do it.
Yeah,
I don't have.
well, I had invited them, I had invited them to our last meeting, so it doesn't hurt for me to apply on behalf of Davis.
No, okay,
So
let's do it.
it's just a letter of intent.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put Davis in there.
No.
All right, Brandon's here now.
You see that from Todd?
Oh, I know,
Looks so good.
I know. You're welcome.
much is in
No, I'm just kidding. Todd's been awesome, but Stacy and I designed the sign.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You
Hey,
want-
go ahead.
Send it to Commissioner.
Steph, you're up.
Okay,
Brandon?
awesome. I've got Brandon here. We are going to talk to you today about the LMSA Sewer Lagoon Rehabilitation Project. Brandon's gonna go over the agreements for reimbursement for ARPA funds.
Okay, I do have to pull them up real quick. So
Oh, well,
wait just a moment. Yeah, take a breath.
We are 18 minutes early.
Look at that.
Okay, so I've got 18 minutes.
No.
No,
I'll keep you guys on it. Okay, we have 2 funding agreements to discuss. One of them is for 2 separate disbursements, so 3 awards of ARPA total. The first one is really just a pass-through funding agreement from the state, from DWQ. This is the $5 million that was awarded to the county for both the LMSA rehabilitation project and the infrastructure coming through Promontory Commerce Center. That's the one that Black Pines Pine.
Oh, yeah.
So the $5 million from the state is meant to cover that whole project. We decided to prioritize the LMSA project first and pay for all of that, and then whatever's left over would most likely spill over into, is that agreement still in place?
Yep.
Yes.
Will be spilled over into the Black Pine infrastructure?
Yep.
Okay. So this agreement is specifically from the county to LMSA for their sewer rehabilitation project. It doesn't have anything to do with Black Pines portion. We are awarding them up to 5 million. And I've only given them up to 5 million because we really don't know how much it's gonna cost in the end, and that's how the original project structured. So just award them the full 5 million, as much as they need. And then whatever is not expended of the 5 million, they'll relinquish back to the county.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Did we confirm with the state? Because we originally had the bid of 1.9 million for that portion of the project. But we don't have to go back to the water quality board if we spend 3 million.
No,
or 4 million.
not at all.
Just
No.
making sure that.
Yeah.
That we're okay.
No, our budgets that we told them our project would be, don't necessarily bind us to those specific amounts. They just say, here's 5 million, and keep it within the scope.
Great.
So whether we move it around, it doesn't
And the
matter.
last time I talked to, Ken Hoffman at the state, he said, please, please, please spend all 5 million.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
and not necessarily on the LMSA project, but he said in general, for the 2 projects, we want you to expend all 5 million.
Yeah, my concern was, as we were going through that agreement,
If we had to do a
maybe it bound us to
1.9.
very specific things, and then we had to go back anyway.
It does bind us to
The
only
matching.
using construction cost reimbursement, which
Correct.
will tie into what Brandon will transition into for county, what we're asking from the county.
Very good.
Yeah, so if there's any other questions about that one, I can answer them, or else I'll move on to our other agreement. That one's for the LMSA's construction costs.
Right. And so what's the plans for the RFP on that?
As soon as this gets passed, I'll draft the RFP and take the RFP to LMSA in October.
Okay.
At their October meeting, and then we'll put that out for bid.
Good.
So we should have that contracted and ready to go November, and hopefully it started in November.
So I'm assuming it's reimbursement, just like we have with our.
Exactly.
So it's reimbursement.
It is, but it's actually direct payment as well. So LMSA will be the one hiring all the contractors, and they'll be receiving the bill, but they'll send the bill directly to the county, and Scott Park and John Bond will just issue a check to the contractor on behalf of LMSA.
Okay.
So,
But we don't have the 5 million yet, do we, in our account?
no, so we will then turn around and ask a reimbursement from the state
Okay.
for the
Got
money
it.
we just spent towards LMSA's project.
Yeah, okay, good.
We're gonna keep the funds from flowing through LMSA as much as we can help it. Instead, we'll just pay for it directly on behalf.
Yeah.
On their behalf.
Good.
There is some flexibility though, in case we need to forward some funds to them or reimburse. If that ever happens, it is in the agreement to allow so, but it is only if the county agrees to it.
Got it.
So it's just there as one of the tools in the tool belt.
Okay. What else?
The next agreement is also for Little Mountain Service Area, and this one is the county's ARPA dollars specifically. Not anything coming from the state, and we're not a pass-through entity from DEQ. This one's our allotment of county ARPA dollars, and it is for a total of 550,000. 300,000 will go toward the administrative and engineering costs of that Lagoon rehabilitation project that we just discussed. And then 250,000 will go toward a new project that Stephanie has submitted on behalf of LMSA. This is for an infiltration issue that we'll have to scope, slip line. I guess the updated cost has come in, it's about 250,000.
Yeah, and that actually does not cover the slip lining at all.
Oh, is that right?
No.
Is that just for the scoping?
That is, no, it's,
No.
the scoping's done. The 250,000 deals with the infiltration issues at the pump station. And in some of, but it will not cover slip lining at all.
How much is the slip lining gonna cost?
About 2 million, and I've applied for a grant from the state for that. So.
So what does this do for the two
So
hundred
this
fifty?
this will mitigate the current infiltration issues that are happening at the mainline connection where the pump station's at. And it'll make the line functional, and we can issue will serve and do connections at that point. But it's kind of a Band-Aid for long-term. Long-term, LMSA is gonna have to slip line those pipes, but currently they don't have to be functional. But they do have to spend about $250,000 of infiltration remediation at the pump station site.
Okay.
So, yeah, they're,
So at 9350 or wherever it is, and then it pumps to the
and that
lagoon
pumps,
from there.
exactly,
Okay.
that's exactly where it is. So the scoping was done, the infiltration portions are right there at the pump station. There is some infiltration from the lateral lines, that's coming into that section. And we're addressing that, for the individual users, and that would be Rob Howard's property as well as the Westinghouse and the Compass Minerals line. So those are being addressed separately. Those lines were not scoped, because they're not LMSA owned lines. So those will be being addressed with them. They will have to, they'll have to do the improvements on those lines, or they're plugged currently. The Pinnacle one is plugged, and so is Rob Howard's, except for Rob Howard's plug came out, and we're dealing with that right now. So those have to be dealt with on a private level. Oh yeah, it's fun. It's literally a crap show out there. And, but right now for LMSA to be functional so that others can connect into the main line, we need to get that infiltration dealt with on the LMSA owned portion of the line. And that will be $250,000.
Stephanie, in the exhibit that I have attached, it's the ARPA assistance application. It's filled out like all of our ARPA assistance applications. I just want to make sure that with it just being the infiltration and not necessarily the scoping, that we fit it within this scope. Right now it says LMSA has experienced infiltration issues that will be officially diagnosed through scoping of the line in June. LMSA is seeking funding to address any needed repairs that the scoping identifies.
Correct.
Is this considered one of those needed repairs?
That is the
scoping
needed
has
repair.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Just
So the
making sure the
scoping,
agreement
the
captures
scoping
that.
was paid for by LMSA, was completed and paid for by LMSA. The repairs, they are not in a position to pay $250,000 to get the system repaired, and the system is not functional at this time.
Okay.
We're not able to issue any kind of will serves. There's 6 will serves on the table currently. And once we're able to do this repairs, we can start issuing will serves.
Okay. So this agreement then has very similar provisions like all other ARPA agreements, except it will do direct payments as well, like the other project, instead of on a reimbursement basis. So when LMSA incurs these costs, they'll just send the bill to the county will pay it out of its ARPA account directly.
Okay,
Any questions from me?
makes sense. Okay, anything else, Jeff?
That's it. We just need to get this up and functioning. So
And have you already done the RFP for the?
I haven't. I'm waiting for this to be approved. Once this is approved, then I can start working on the RFP and we can get both projects going, and they'll have separate RFPs. One for the state ARPA dollars, and then one for the county ARPA dollars.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Questions,
No.
comments? Okay, looks like you're good to go, Brandon.
Okay, so not tomorrow, but
But
next
next
week's
week.
agenda.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll get it there.
Thank you,
That'll
Commissioner.
be a really big shoe next week, okay?
It is.
A lot of stuff. All right, thanks, Brandon. Thanks for your work on that.
You're welcome.
We'll get it done before it freezes.
Okay,
Yeah,
Sean,
for sure.
you're up on pending closed session.
Okay,
You got Courtland coming
yes, let me,
Got him under control.
and Scott,
Scott's out today,
is he? Okay.
but I'll call Corbin real quick.
Well, we're flying today.
Oh, because we got a clock that tells the right time.
Yeah. Look at that clock. Amazing what that
3
does.
seconds fast, but I think we could live with that.
We can live with 3 seconds.
I'm gonna find out right.
Oh, is it?
No, it's right on mine. Is
Really?
it?
Mine's slow. Mine was on.
My iPad
238
went
when I
the
looked
same
up.
time.
I'm at 2:38 right on the button.
No, so you've got it as 10 minutes fast, or 10 seconds fast.
I am, a little bit.
I'm a few seconds slow. It's all right, Sean. You're
What's
right
this
there in the
one?
ballpark.
Jessica, this wasn't such a bad day, was it?
Hello.
Hey,
I said
can you
just-
come up to the commission
just
office?
sit
They
here
are
and,
ahead of
Good, how are you
schedule,
doing?
ready to start that closed session.
And if we ever say, hey.
All right,
one thing
thank
that
you.
I think we will want to mess it eventually, not right now, is the.
Yeah, I believe it.
Opioid money, and what we're doing with that.
I agree with that 100%.
Did you want to call Ariana, or do you want me to send it?
I didn't have it, but I already sent something to Bob Dandoy. He's
Oh,
kind of,
okay.
I did send her back for her laptop. I said, if you're just listening in to familiarize yourself, you're gonna want some work to do.
She and I have been going back and forth.
Have you?
With emails and meetings and stuff.
what do you got there?
Just an article. I was looking to see if we had an
Oh,
article on, I was looking to see if we had an article on that press release, but I guess it wasn't very big news for the Standard.
I saw your deal on the KSL.
You heard it?
No, I just saw your post.
Oh, I was like,
So Sean, I
you didn't
found
see
some,
me. I was radio.
development costs for.
Who was that guy?
I don't
Free
listen
Gate
to
Trail.
KSL. I don't
Tell me
listen
if
to
you
talk
think this is
radio.
crazy.
Oh,
Gus knew him. Gus is in
We have a
talk
couple
radio
minutes.
all day long.
Does he?
When he's doing home care.
175K to 225K
So they just
per
pulled me
mile
in.
for about 10-foot paved. route.
Johnny Ferry sent me a
That
message. He said, you
per mile,
Per
175.
mile.
hurried out
That's
there.
low.
1 minute late.
Oh,
Johnny said,
okay. We
so I had to
can
wait for no.
253
Like,
per mile?
Johnny's.
Oh, he's a good dude. I only met him 2 years ago
10-foot
at that
wide trail.
event.
Paved.
For
I did one of my
5,280
internships with
feet.
Jenny
That's a mile.
when I was in school 2 years ago. And then that's how I met him. He's a good dude. He's just so generous. So generous with his time.
Ashley will know.
Oh, really?
Give me just a
I
second.
thought about calling Ashley.
Yeah, we should call Ashley real quick.
Okay. I just need projections. So I can get.
Yeah,
this
they can get those.
Local match. 0.
Well, I got enough ibuprofen in this year and I think I'm
Can you really treat, you think you have a kidney stone?
something.
And you can treat that with ibuprofen?
Well, I can get the pain. Just old. Okay.
All right. 3 p.m. closed session regarding purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, North Ogden. I'd entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, we're now in closed session. We're gonna go offline.